and someone must have put them there because I looked out the hallway. I'm like, I looked on the chairs. I was like, no. And then I went into business office. I'm like, oh my God, there they are.
I know.
They're cute too.
I love those.
Yeah.
They're my favorite.
Scott, I apologize. I was thinking 4:30 in my head, and I know you sent me the calendar.
Oh, did you come for it?
Yep.
Yeah.
head right into board comments and committee updates.
So we met today for the Health Benefits Committee, and we're reviewing, we have interviewed 3 companies, the potential new insurance plans for the employees, and today they presented the pricing for each insurance company. We saw 2 today, so we have 1 more to go. And yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of numbers, but we're getting there. So we should know by probably end of May. We'll have an idea. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Get right into the agenda. We'll start with the superintendent report.
Thank you. Now, you'll notice Sean is not here tonight. He has a baseball commitment. So I wanted to make sure to mention a couple of things that Sean probably would have mentioned if he were here. One kind of exciting piece of news, and Andy, I'm going to ask you to make sure I pronounce this correct. Orion Razik. Orion Razik is a senior at Newmarket High School in the SST culinary program who won the New Hampshire State Skills competition. So he's really shown himself to be an exceptional performer in that area. My understanding he's heading on to some higher level of competition. So really exciting. So congratulations to Orion. That was. I think there's an article going to be in the newspaper about it here, coming right up. And under other things just to be aware of school-wise, I had the honor of popping in on the... We're doing okay there? I can't quite... okay, I'll try again. Okay. I just feel like I'm very loud all of a sudden. So anyway, the Unified Arts Family Night is tonight over at the elementary school. I popped in just before coming over here. Lots of families over there, but what's really neat is it's all of our Unified Arts programs are on display. There's a whole school art show going on. There's line dancing being run by the music and PE department. There's videos kids made with the robotics. There's actually sumo wrestling with robots, which is kind of cool. And then there's an open mic night in the library for kids to do poetry recitations and other things. So really a fun night, and thank you to all of our Unified Arts teachers for putting that on. A great event. We got some, hopefully will turn out to be really good news here in the next a few weeks. We have an opportunity, or we've been invited to apply for a grant from the Seacoast Mental Health Center. And the reason why I bring this up, why it's important is Erica McNeil, our Student Services Director, does a lot of work networking with people around the state and keeping in contact with people, and simply by luck of the draw of being in the right place at the right time and having a conversation with the right people, we received an invitation to apply for a grant. It is a competitive grant, but we're told that based on the work we've already done around MTSSB and so forth, we're on the leading edge of likely candidates. But this grant is a potential for us to get $250,000 a year for the next 5 years to support SEL and mental health related stuff. And the thing I was most excited when I said, well, gee, because there's a 25% matching district contribution. And so I asked, well, we've just shifted a couple of mental health positions into our local budget that were ESSER funded. Would that constitute our 25% match? And they said, absolutely. So in a sense, we've already done the part that we need to do. So hopefully if we get the grant, it just has a lot of upward potential. The focus of it would be developing an MTSSB system. We would probably there'd be a project manager we would hire who would be a BCBA, a behavioral specialist who would come in and work with us around. But what's really exciting about it is it's work we're already doing that this would complement particularly well. So we're pretty excited about it. So obviously I'll keep you posted. But Erica and Patty are frantically scrambling around to get the grant application in because the deadline is tomorrow, and we literally were invited to apply yesterday. And it was one of those things where I guess there was another school that was on the list that was likely to get it. And when they pulled out, they said, wait a minute, who else meets the criterion? And thank you, Erica, for being one step ahead of the game. So anyway, we'll keep you posted, but it's a really exciting opportunity. And I would just sort of put that alongside some of the work Jason Carey has done in the last year or so around cybersecurity stuff. One of the things that we've benefited from is when people know you're working on something and you're talking to people outside of your district, opportunities present themselves. And similarly, Jason's gotten a number of opportunities for us around cybersecurity audits and so forth that are just really exciting. So I think it's important to keep that in mind when we have good people. It's not just what they do on the job, it's also contacts and connections they can make to bring good stuff to the district. Last thing I wanted to mention, I'm actually meeting tomorrow with Amy Gigante and Sam Kerrigan from the Newmarket Rec. I posed the idea to them about getting a community recreation committee together to start talking about spaces and what we have available, because obviously we share a lot as a community, and so we're going to get together and start talking about the possibility of forming a joint school district town committee to start evaluating what's out there and maybe start to develop a laundry list of what are the things that are needed to promote healthy recreation in the community. But I'm excited to have the opportunity to meet with Amy and Sam and start that dialogue. And I think that's all.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll head right into presentations. We have some light, enjoyable presentations tonight, starting with the Q3 financials by Jana.
Anytime Jana is here, it's an enjoyable
It is
time.
light.
Isn't it, Jana? It's a party for Jana. We know that.
So one of the things I want to say about the quarterly financials, at this time, the third quarter is kind of like our New Year's. Like, this is where we really invest a lot of time in looking at detail. There are a couple of items at the end where that's a little different than what you've seen before that are board recommendations for you to consider. One of those has to do with Mr. Riley's presentation that you'll hear later on. So I'll probably go through the report and then move on to other things and then come back with my recommendation, if that's okay, after you hear what he's presenting. So first of all, the Q3 financials are presented in the same format that you've become accustomed to. We're starting to really kind of hone down and try and figure out where are we going to end at the end of the year. Obviously, it's still an estimate. We still have 3 months of instruction left, but we do feel we have the majority of our expenditures encumbered. And we're on track to receive our revenues as expected, so I don't have a lot of surprises there. You will notice, I'm certain, that as we come into the expenditures by category and you start to look at that bottom line number of what we estimate is left of our expenditure budget, it's much smaller for those of you who were on the board last year than you were presented at this time last year. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them is every year we try and hone our budgeting process. We try to get a little bit closer to our need, and it's a progressive goal that we have. So obviously when you're budgeting closer to your need, you have less left at the end if you're accurate. The other part, I just wanted to remind the board that this year's budget and our expenditures include the first year of salary adjustments based on our salary study we did last spring, in the spring of 2023. We found some deficits in salary comparisons that we wanted to adjust not all at once, but we were looking at a 3-year plan to do so. The first year of that plan was not budgeted. In our 24-25 budget, we have taken those into consideration, but that's another factor here. We had some staffing needs, and while we do our very, very best to predict a year and a half in advance exactly who we're going to need, student needs ultimately drive our staffing plan. So we had a few positions that we added. We had a few that we reduced or eliminated. Many of those have been discussed in front of this board. We've added 2 FTEs for health aides based on some student needs in the district. We added some day porters, which is actually really a shift. We had bid that out as part of our custodial contract. We found a value of having our own staff perform that role, so we reduced our contract accordingly to absorb that cost. We kind of shifted that. We had 2.5 FTEs of regular substitutes, and what I mean by that is that they're full-time. They come every day, and we deploy them as needed. That was done at the last minute because we just didn't have a robust substitute roster. We're hoping that going into this next cycle, we will have rectified that, but at the time, we needed to have some people on hand. And then finally, we've discussed this before, reduced grant funding. Each year, it feels like we get just a little bit less in our title grants and our IDEA grant. And this was the year where our Title I funding didn't fully fund the staff member that we've had in the grant for years and years. So we reallocated some of that money. We funded a different position, but it wasn't necessarily a one-for-one. So those are some of the reasons for the ending balance. By category, we have a positive variance in salaries at this point of just under 46,000. We have a positive variance in benefits of 16,000, which is pretty close to what we budgeted. And in operations, we have a positive variance of 439,000, leaving us with right now an estimated unexpended balance of $501,000. That's, as I said, will shift, it will move as we move through these last quarters, but it's as close as we can come at this time. Our revenues, as I said, are pretty much on track to what we expect. We still haven't received all of our allocations, but that's true to form at this time of the year. We still have some to go, but we don't anticipate a great variance from what we've predicted versus what we're going to ultimately realize. Food service, little good news on the food service front. We've been awarded another supply chain assistance grant. This is the fourth award we've received in the last 2 years, and those grant funds can be used to purchase and offset the cost of minimally processed food items used in our program, like milk and local produce and things like that. So while we didn't know we were going to get those awards, obviously our budget was built, we still have to have food in our program. So this is resulting in a positive variance. We estimate that we're going to end the year with a positive variance in the end of about 28,000. 26,000 of that right now is attributable to this supply chain grant. So we're, if you take that out, we actually are pretty close with our budget. We also, if you recall, I just want to keep reminding the board that we ended last year with a positive balance in our food service for the first time in many, many years. That cannot be returned to offset tax rate, but what it can do is if we have a negative variance in our food service, you can use that to cover it. So what it does is it removes our obligation, in essence, to make a transfer from the general fund to cover those losses. So I think that because this is the threshold we have, I anticipate we have at least probably 3 more years where we can kind of rely comfortably on having this cushion. And hopefully we can continue to make adjustments and gain efficiencies in our program. And our goal is always to operate a profitable program. In reality, it's a little harder to do than we think of sometimes.
How long can that money stay there, or does it have to go to the general fund?
No, that's a good question. If it was over a certain threshold, I think they say if it's over 1 month's operating, you have a certain period of time to do it. But a lot of districts, if they are able to maintain profitability, they'll end the year every year with a positive, and they just use it. As long as they're using it for their program, it's fine. So as long as you're under that threshold, it would just stay. We do not have to give that back. And then impact fees, they change a little bit. Every month we accrue a little bit of interest on that. I have an analysis of those later on, so that you'll know kind of what as we start planning and talking about capital improvements, we can talk about those. Finally, the board may have recalled that we switched the trustees of the trust funds, switched over to a new administrative financial institution to manage the funds. And this is the first quarter that I've been able to kind of report on that to you. Compared to last year, quarter 3 in 2023, we earned $370.97 last year. So far for the whole quarter of 2024, we've yielded 14,500 plus. So it's a much, much more robust package. That said, when you look at the table at the back, you'll see that it's a little bit different animal than what we had before. There are earnings and there are now fees every month. And so what you're seeing here is the net of those two. So it's not always going to be the same every month. We had a couple of high earning months and the fees are roughly the same. And then we had a lower earned month that, was more, much lower than the others. But over the course, the whole point is, just like with investments, you hope it goes up. So far, things look like they're going well there. The other item I wanted to bring forward to the board has to do with the bond proceeds. If you recall, we took out a bond in 2017 for $39 million. We've expended most of it on the lovely facilities you have here. We do have a small balance left at this point of approximately $214,000. We, at the back of this report, that's one of the items I'm kind of presenting to you, as to we have several options about what we do with those remaining funds. And it doesn't have to be tonight, but I will be asking the board to give us some guidance about how they would like to see us resolve those remaining funds. We can't hang on to them forever in an account. Preview of coming attractions. We are excited, another grant-funded matter. The playground we just finished in December. And immediately after that, on January 1st, a new law took effect saying that if you have a playground that you're designing, you have to have a resilient surface access point, so for ADA compliance. So we were close enough to that we felt like, geez, I wish we'd known that 6 months ago so we could have done it, but we were able to work with the state and our playground installer, and we were able to capitalize on ESSER funding to actually put that surface in so it will be like we had done it originally. We have a little bit of a time constraint. We have to do it this summer. The ESSER funds are done as of September 30th, so we have to do it before that time. But our installer feels that can happen as soon as the kids are out. We'll have to disable the playground again to install it, but it's nowhere near the detail and the scope of the former project. So
It's like a couple of weeks, right?
yeah. So we're very excited. The color they picked is standard red mixed with black, our Newmarket colors. So we're excited to see that. One other thing, coming attractions, I'm cautiously optimistic, maybe less optimistic, but the New Hampshire House actually surprisingly passed a bill to reinstate a state payment of 7.5% of the New Hampshire retirement contribution for teachers. That's a big deal for us. That would be about $140,000 a year that we wouldn't have to raise and appropriate from local taxation. So we're very excited. It went from the House into the Senate. We have to see what happens over in the Senate. But if that were memorialized on a permanent basis, that would be definitely helpful to schools and towns, actually, because it included, in addition to teachers, it included fire and police, so it would help in multiple ways. So just something to keep your eye on. You have another document in front of you for the lead remediation grant. Apparently, you have to name an agent to expend, which was not part of the original application. So you've already voted to approve it and accept the funds. So now tonight I'm asking you in a separate vote to allow me to submit the application on behalf of the district. But that will amount to about $5,000. It will offset costs we've already expended on lead remediation efforts. This was not because we had deficits in our building, but they changed the lead standard from 15 parts per billion to 5, and we had a few outlets that were in between that range. So this funding allowed us to bring everything up. We are in compliance with all the state regs now. Mr. Riley and his team worked on that, replaced faucets, and got everything all squared away. And then the final, another grant, not as good as Erica's grant, but we are applying for a National School Lunch Equipment grant. We've been approved before in the past where we got a food processor to expand our offering here. We're hoping to get a popcorn popper so that we can offer healthy popcorn as a snack option. So they were supposed to have announced the awards by April 1st. That's come and gone. We haven't heard anything, but again, cautiously optimistic that we might have that. So I'll talk about, I have two options for the board to think about.
Do you mind, sorry to interrupt, do you mind if we just maybe just go back to finances and see if there's any questions about that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I happen to have a question. That's probably why I asked.
Okay.
But I was just curious, as far as the general fund encumbrances, was pretty much all we expect for the year? Any all known encumbrances at this point?
Yes, known being
The key
the
word,
operative word there. So in this new system, one of the great parts about it is when we bring a position in, we can set that position up at the beginning of the year, and it encumbers not only the salaries, but it encumbers all of the benefits that go with it. So at this point, we think that we have all of our spring coaches encumbered. We think that we have all of our co-curriculars encumbered. We think we have all of our salary in the system, and that's baked into this number. That said, you know, we could hire somebody, or something could happen, we have staffing change, those things would all play into it. But we feel pretty solid with our salaries, and the two variances there are pretty small. So, you know, we think pretty good about that.
Does anyone else have any questions on the budget portion? Gary? Okay, sorry.
I mean, I'll say, you give me a microphone, I'll take it. I don't think we should and you mentioned this, right? The fact that the fund balance remaining is smaller is actually testament to the district's budgeting process, and that it's tighter than, nothing to speak ill of any past budgeting processes, but the fact that it's getting smaller and smaller, this is actually a relative good thing. It means that we're budgeting more closer to what we actually end up spending.
I agree. And I think once you establish the new norm, then it's less of an impact when they go to do tax rate setting.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be the biggest, a smaller fund balance will result in a less of an adjustment in the fall, but then the next year, it's more consistent and
It
stable.
smoothes it out. It doesn't make it whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, well, that's always the goal, and the challenge as well, is to try and smooth things out, because sometimes we don't know all of our revenues, and we don't get that kind of granular information that we wish we did. So, but that is the goal.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be said without you and Todd and the team getting the recognition of the fact that that was work that got us to that.
Yeah.
Right? Even though it's nice sometimes to have this fund balance, we brought our tax rate down. It was hard work to get to where we are now.
Yeah, it's been
Should be recognized.
several years now. So, did anyone else have any questions? I'm not going to go through the line item detail because there are variance explanations for most things on both the revenues and the expenditures. Any questions on the impact fees? It's $277,000 as of the end of March. When we start to talk about projects, there are certain things that we can use that for, and certain things that we can't. So once we start planning our capital expenditures for next year, we should start looking into what things we can use those things for. But the good news is that very few of them are nearing expiration date. Most of them are several years out, so we have some time to plan for that.
And those can be used anytime prior to the expiration date. We could use the ones from 2030 now if we decided to.
Yes, yeah, I would recommend first in, first out, but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely we
So
could.
we could take an aggregate out of the
Yep.
entire summer portions.
And like I said, most of them are within the last couple of years, so we have some time to really think and plan. But just, that's a good thing to have.
Yep.
Any other questions on the financials before I get to my big asks? So,
Sorry. If we could get any and all information tonight, I'd love to be able to vote on those items tonight for Jen if we could, but if we can't, try to make sure we can ask as much as we can intelligently ask at this point to make a decision next meeting, or ask for more information next meeting.
yeah, the first one is actually the one that's a little more time sensitive. It has to do with the retirement incentives. The board recalls approving a $10,000 retirement incentive that was done as, kind of in the fall. It resulted in a payout of $50,000 beyond what we had normally budgeted. We figured we would absorb it, but we wrote into that agreement that we had some options. So in the event that we were coming in too close this year, we could defer payment into the next fiscal year. So it's at this point where I'm kind of presenting to the board, when I take everything into consideration, including our regular severance and those bonuses, it looks like we're coming in about $57,500 over what we had budgeted. The numbers that I presented to you tonight include that negative $57,500, but we don't have to take it from this year. We could pull them out and pay them out of next year's budget if you wanted to try and increase the amount returning. Either way, it's going to have a negative impact on one of the 2 years, obviously, as a reduction money that's available, but we do have the ability to take it from the end of the year this year, or we could make it be one of the first things we pay out next year, with the understanding that next year at this time, we'll be looking at an overage probably in that arena too. So again, I don't need a decision from you on that tonight, but I do ask that it arrive back onto the agenda by one of the May meetings, because we do have to start structuring those payments and getting those things together for those individuals. And then the other recommendation, if it's okay, I'll defer that discussion until after Dave presents his, and then we can kind of talk about what those options are. It has to do with what we do with the bond fund, and one of the items that Dave's speaking to kind of ties into that.
And all the bond fund interest, except for obviously this year, has been spent in previous years.
Right, we've had 2 different warrant articles over the last 4 years where we've brought, one year, I think it was, well, you're putting me on the spot here, but it was over $600,000 one year, and then we had 121, I think, the next. So that was interest that was earned. It was voted by the legislative body to bring it in and put it into a capital reserve, which made good sense. The remaining interest that was earned on that is something that we cannot expend for the project. Typically what it does is it would return as part of our reserve balance at the end of the year. But it's small at this point, about 8,000. All right. Anything else on the financials?
As always, Jana, you do a fantastic job. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do you want me to stay up here and go right on to the next one? I think I have the next agenda item.
It's up to you. Dave wants to present, we can do that. If you'd rather go into the...
Is that okay if we go out of order?
Services. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do you mind?
So I think my first item is the awarding of the on-call electrical services. And we are recommending that we stick with our current vendor, Martinell. Cost and everything else included. They're a shop of a size that can support our district. They have legacy knowledge of everything that's in this district, and to be honest, they take amazing care of us. Another vendor, when there's an emergency, they'll meet me here at 10 o'clock at night, they'll meet me here 5 in the morning if they need to keep the school running and keep the kids learning. They really take care of the kids, so that is my recommendation. We'll move on to Dave's fun stuff.
Is that an appendix item, Dave's fun stuff?
Dave's fun stuff. We should call it that. I love doing this stuff. It's a sickness. The first item I have is the courtyard. I was asked to come up with a less expensive, I think was the first.
Yeah, let me, if I could just jump in for a sec, Dave. You may recall, when did we come back with the engineering and the architectural designs that were upwards of $700K? That was in the fall, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so we came to you with a design that was, I think all of us agreed, very pricey, that we just didn't feel was worth the investment. And the instruction that the board gave to me to ask Dave to follow up on is to find a solution for the courtyard that was significantly less costly, would address the fact that it's a bit of an eyesore, I guess you would say, currently, and it's not terribly useful. Was there something we could do on the lower end of the cost scale? I gave Dave a guideline of keep it under $25,000 as a ballpark, and he sought out advice, and so this is the result of that discussion. So
I'm looking for something that makes the space usable and inviting, inexpensive, something that's reversible, so if we decide we want to do a little grand scheme out there, we haven't, backed ourselves into a corner in any way. And again, under $25,000. What I'm proposing is, honestly, some flat spots for some picnic tables. The lower end of the hill is relatively level. I could throw 3 picnic tables down there. We're good. The upper end, towards guidance, has quite a slope to it. So what I'm proposing is we literally eat into the hill to give me a flat spot. Then we take the stone that are pictured and make a retaining wall U. and we fill under the picnic table with a gravel or a stone. And it's, we get level spots. It's not, there have been historic drainage issues out there. This will not affect the drainage. This is easily reversible. It gives us room for 6 picnic tables out there. It could be used for teachers eating lunch. It could be used for senior privilege eating lunch. The art room and library could both use the space. And again, it's inexpensive and it's reversible. Yes, sir.
Let me say back to you what I think I heard you tell me if I've got it right. So basically, we're going to regrade the space, put in a retaining wall to hold the uphill side of it so we level out more of.
What I'm,
Only portions, where the picnic
Only
tables
part,
are.
yeah.
rectangles
table
the size of a picnic table
Okay,
is all the retaining wall is going to be holding back.
okay.
My fear is if I do a larger retaining wall, if I try to level that space, we're going to have more drainage issues.
Yes, no,
And it is a drainage nightmare out there.
All right, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Retaining wall's a big undertaking, so.
Yes, no, so these are 3 little flat spots that a picnic table can sit on.
Okay.
So that your hot dog isn't rolling off the table when you're trying to eat lunch.
So you're going to get rid of the grass? Is
No,
that-
we're keeping the grass.
Keeping the grass, okay.
Just 3 small rectangles that a picnic table can sit on out of stone with a retaining wall, keeping the, uphill side from collapsing down into that.
Okay.
Other than that, it'll stay lawn.
When you're,
Again-
in your diagram, the gray
Yeah, we're-
walkway's already there.
Gray walkways are already
And it's
there.
just
Yeah.
really those 3 gray pads.
Just those 3 graded pads.
I'm just trying to picture this, so it's going to be on this side? If you're looking at the picture, I'm sorry, I just don't, because I've never been out there, so. Where would you put that wall? Is it,
3 flat spots would be there,
Oh, okay.
there, and there.
that far.
okay.
Guidance
Oh, okay.
It is raining.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell from the picture. Thank you.
So that is my proposed excitement for the courtyard. Quick, easy, reversible. Again, one of the limiting factors is getting any materials into that space because it is completely enclosed by school. All of this could be brought through the event hallway and through the doors. There'd be no need for a crane. Again, I'm trying to keep it simple, light, easy, and yet make that space usable.
And the assumption would be that this would be a project easily being able to be done this summer, so.
Yes.
Wrap it up.
Yep.
So if we said yes, it could be done, and when we return in August, it would be good to go. And it's also something that would be easy to maintain once you've done it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's also something the playground committee that came up with the last design said, well, if we can't have our amphitheater, yeah, that'll work. So I've got buy-in from them, so.
But I think that's a very important point to bring up, Dave, is because there has been a committee that's actively looked at this, and certainly we had some grandiose visions that I think in a more perfect world, we might have been able to do that. But I think, unfortunately, once you sort of closed everything in, the cost of doing it just exponentially went up. So I think it's certainly worth noting there are people who've been invested in it for quite some time, and the fact that Dave and Andy spent some time with that group and got their thumb of approval.
Yes.
Not as their first choice, but like, yeah, it'll work. I think that's valuable input.
What's the funding source for this?
That's where we're going to go to next.
So what I would propose, this actually does fit within the purposes of the bond.
That's what I thought.
It was
Yeah.
part of the original plan. They got, from my understanding, to 50% completion, and they were coming in a little hot on the expenditures, so there were things that they pulled out. That was one that got pulled out. So this absolutely meets the criteria for the use of the bond funds, albeit it won't take what's left, but I do recommend that we proceed using bond funds for this portion of the project. It does fit with those bond funds.
Thank you.
You get some very expensive picnic tables for $250,000.
Any other questions on courtyard?
Thank
No?
you.
Okay. My next item is the playground resilient matting. I've included the design. This was a tricky one. We started designing this playground before I was even working at this district. By the time the law was announced, we were already so far sunken into design. We really couldn't meet it. the cost would be too expensive. It would have blown us right through the budget for doing the playground. But Mr. Allen expressed that he really wanted to meet the spirit of the law, that we really, and that was something the Playground Committee stressed all along, we want it to be accessible to everybody. We want everybody to be able to enjoy this playground. I was looking at, I don't want to say cheaper, more cost-effective solutions. So one of the things I was looking at was horse stall matting and putting that on top of the chips, so it would be easier. The wood chips are, strictly speaking, ADA compliant, but try to push a wheelchair through those things. It's just not feasible. So we were looking at horse matting or another cheaper solution. My only concern about that, you know, we're at the 100th anniversary of this building. I have to assume any project I do is going to be here at least for 100 years. The wood chips rotting under those mats that we then have to move and replace it was just going to be a nightmare to maintain long term. This solution is going to be slightly higher than the wood chips, so we're not constantly having to shovel wood chips off this resilient surface. It gives you access to all the equipment. It's ESSER funded. It meets the law, even though we're not required to meet the law because we got the playground done before the law went into effect. So I really think it's a win-win-win all the way around.
And just as a reminder about how ESSER funds expire September 30, this was a project that we got approved last year, so it's already been pre-approved, so we're good to go on it. One of the things we're trying to do is to spend the remaining balance of that ESSER funding, and if we don't do it, we're going to lose it anyway. So this is a project that fits under that I think is money well spent, and it will really bring a full closure to that project.
And in your diagram, is the blue, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is the blue representing the matting? Blue on my screen.
I just don't want to lie to you. Yes,
Yes,
the blue is representing the matting.
Okay, thank you.
So, two questions. Like, one, what's the actual material the matting is made of?
It's a rubberized material that meets the requirements for within playground fall zones. So it's they tell me it'll take New England winters.
Tire. Yeah.
So,
Pieces of tire.
yeah, and it's designed for playgrounds. It's,
Then second question, how, other than at the boundaries where it abuts the concrete, how is it secured to the ground?
it's adhered to the ground. My understanding is it's basically a concrete poured first,
Okay.
and then this is adhered to that concrete.
All right, so we're going to have to, part of the cost is you're going to have to dig a foundation.
We have to take
for it.
all those chips we just put in there back out of there.
Okay.
But, you know, I think for the accessibility, it's a small price to pay, to let anybody be in that playground.
Yeah.
I think is really
And
important.
again, they're saying it can be done in 2 weeks in the
Yeah.
summertime, yeah.
Yep. Any more questions on?
Just, I don't know, it just strikes me as kind of odd to dig up, put concrete down, to then cover it with matting. That's soft, but I understand that probably need a very flat level.
I think
surface
had,
to get into.
had the law been in effect when we designed the project, I think we would have done this right from the get-go. And I think we to be
It's
honest.
just the idea of putting concrete
Right.
in a playground.
Right.
It's kind of like, huh, but I understand the
Yeah.
purpose.
So we probably, had the law been in effect when we started this project, we absolutely would have designed the playground to meet that. And I think to be just fully transparent, we're not obligated to do this. We are not. We're not required to do this. In fact, we're grandfathered, if you will, because we met the standards at that time. But I do think if we truly, as Dave indicated, you know, being more than just wanting to meet the requirements of ADA is really
Wanting to meet the
important.
spirit of the law.
Exactly.
Oh, actually, third question then, I guess. How do we keep the concrete from getting cracked by frost heaves? And like, how deep are we going to have to put the
To be
foundation?
honest, I have not, this has happened so quickly, I haven't really had a chance to dig in, but this is a system that's being put in, it's being required by law in New Hampshire playgrounds. And this is pretty much the one solution that meets that. So, you know, it's been going in, and it is the standard for playgrounds now, so I'm really not concerned about.
Okay.
Okay, last but not least, and, you know, what I also find to be very exciting, we approved the security upgrades. We are I want to say 70% of the way through that project, something originally the way our security system was set up, you had to know which camera was where. So you had to have memorized where the cameras were. It's horribly inefficient. What I've done is I've taken a floor plan of the schools, I've placed the cameras on that floor plan. Now you click on that camera on the floor plan, it brings you to that view. So it makes it much quicker if you're doing investigations. What we've also managed to do, example, there are cameras in this room. I've painted a virtual box over that door, virtual box over that door. If you're watching someone on camera and they walk out that door, you double click on that box, it brings you to the next camera. So it allows you to track people as they walk through the building. It's been very helpful on the occasion we have runners at the elementary school, somebody that just bolts. You can now, rather than, oh, wait a minute, what's the next camera in that hallway? I have to click here. Now you can just follow them with these boxes. It's made the system much more efficient. I have upgraded the software down at Dispatch, so they now have this feature too. I've gotten incredibly positive feedback from our police chief, from both SROs. It's made their lives much easier, much more efficient. So it seems to be a real
And
plus.
not for nothing, it pressed the heck out of me when you showed it to me, Dave. It's just,
It's slick. It's really
when you
nice.
see those, when you watch the news and they show some grainy picture of like a bank robber or something, like, how is it that we don't have better cameras? We now
We do.
will answer that question in this building.
We installed new servers for the camera system, and that allowed us to significantly up the resolution, but it has enough storage space that we can still maintain the amount of storage we want, but you can actually read a license plate on a car now, which is something you couldn't do before. So it really is very nice.
And all of this was made possible by a lovely grant.
By a lovely grant and a little bit of training, and we cranked right through it. It's been really nice.
All right. Thank you.
I think that-
Did you want to ask something of them, Jana? Yeah.
Relative to the playground, so.
Yep.
Per municipal law, remaining bond proceeds can only be used for the project for which they were voted upon, unless at a later meeting, they're voted upon for a different purpose. And by a meeting, I don't mean the school board, I mean like on the warrant in March. So therefore, if you don't do that, then it says, the law says you shall use it to pay down your bond, to make payments on your bond. So we have been delayed a little bit with COVID on some of our projects, and so now we're finally getting to the tail end of the projects, but we do need to decide how we're going to expend the rest of the bond funds. So my recommendation is to follow what Dave has said for the courtyard. I think that definitely is an applicable purpose for the bond. I would urge that we earmark possibly, no offense to your estimating, but just given the scope and the location, I would urge that we earmark a certain amount of money for that. We complete that piece before we disband the bond fund, because if we find something unanticipated in the process of doing that, I don't think it will be big, but I just think we should allow for that contingency. And then after the completion of the project, we have a couple of options. We could, as a board, you could determine to put a warrant article on next March, asking the community to take the remaining bond funds and use it for something else, if you have another purpose in mind. That's one option. The other is to use the remaining bond funds to pay down our bond. That's the second option. And then the third option, I don't know if it's even viable, but the third option would be for us to use it for another purpose of the building project that was put on hold, or that they made an alternate plan for partway through. I don't personally know of any other parts of the project that were not completed as discussed or planned, but that said, I came at the very tail end of the project. Mr. Allen and Mr. Riley came after I did. So if there were some things that people who are on the building committee are aware that were left kind of on the cutting room floor, we might be able to do that, but I'm unaware of any of those things.
Is there an executive parking spot for you? That was supposed to be, no. Can we, so help me, Dan, 200,000 is 2 cents on the tax rate?
Your head's going right where mine was going.
Yeah.
I think the framing question is, when you say we could use it to pay down the the bond, could that only be in the form of a one-time shot against principal? Or could we-
That's what the
Oh,
intention
annual against
is.
principal.
It would pay down our bond. It would be like we would make our normal payment, but we would make an extra principal payment.
Oh, I was going to say, could we pay like the next 6 payments out of leftover funds?
Oh, no, our bond payment's way more than
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna pay
One payment
Yeah, it
is
is
less than a month.
$1 million a year.
Right.
I thought we
Yeah,
couldn't
it would
pay
be an
down the
extra
principal.
payment on principal, but if you really wanted to annualize that and do a cash value analysis, paying off $200,000 at the beginning of a bond, because we're still got, 26
Makes
years,
so much of a difference.
it would make a difference long-term.
I thought we couldn't pay down to the principal. I didn't realize we could do that.
We would use it as part of our bond payment. It would basically
I thought
mean
I
like,
asked before if we could pay early on the bond. I was told we couldn't, but I may have misunderstood.
well, I can get some clarity on that. My understanding is that it would be used to make the annual payments on principal until the bond, so I think it goes towards the principal, so
But
it'd be-
what's different is that it's not like we're raising and appropriating money to pay down the principal. It
Right.
is The bond remnants are going to pay it down.
No, I realize that. The reason I ask is because unencumbered fund balance, we've been giving back to the taxpayers. We've given back quite a bit in the last few years. If we were able to pay that to the principal.
But that's different, right? Because it's not part of a bond.
it wasn't part of what was
So
originally.
only bond money's been used to pay.
Right, so
additional
that
towards
original
the principal.
39 million, yeah,
Okay.
no, I hear you, that would be a great solution, that would have been fantastic, but we're not allowed to do that, because they've then sold the bonds to people that are earning interest, so. But for this part, that interest is already factored into the part we got, right, where we are holding the bond money, so putting it back against that, they will allow that as a municipal purpose.
So, just so my clarity then, so if we had 200,000 that we wanted to pay them, instead of paying 2.1 million, the 200,000 would reduce the amount that's coming out of the appropriated budget,
Right.
right? So in the end, 200,000 more dollars
Go
is
back.
left in fund. Okay.
Yeah, so, we would keep our bond in our budget, just for consistency, we would keep our bond payment what it's supposed to be. But this money would offset some of that, so at the
So
end
our
of the year, we
Fund
would have.
balance would be higher.
Right, by the amount that we return back. So those are the kind of the options you have. Again, this is a little bit longer timeline, because I would urge that you wait till the courtyard piece is done before you, before we look at closing it out. But it does give you some time to think about what you would like, what the board would like to see, knowing our options and what you think would be best for the community.
So, knowing that, I'm now thinking, I'd love to pay all that money towards the bond and maybe use impact fees for the courtyard. I'm hesitant to say that impact fees really apply there. I know they probably do in the
That's
letter of the law,
absolutely
but in
valid.
the spirit of it kind of bothers me.
Well,
to be
I
honest
think,
with you,
I
but-
think the impact fees actually would count for that courtyard, and the reason I think that is the impact fees are for growth and expansion, right? And I would argue that that's an expansion of the utility and the school.
To the letter of the law, yeah.
Yeah.
We have 6 picnic tables out there,
Yeah.
so spending 50,000 to get 6, I'm not undermining what your
Yeah.
project,
Yeah.
but to me,
50,000?
it's
23.
23,000. Janice
Yeah.
said, let's be conservative, so I went to 50,
You
35.
just
double
doubled
it.
Well, that's even
Right?
conservative for me.
That's beyond
Have you not been
conservative.
in New Hampshire lately? Fine, even if it was 30,000. In other words, we're not really expanding the utility of the school, because we could have.
But if it's
Well-
legally a use, if
Right.
commercially used-
I
Right
know,
now,
which
it's-
is why I wouldn't object to it, but it gives me a little bit of heartburn, because I'm kind of,
I mean, I guess my question would be, so I
Persnickety
see where you're
about
coming from on the initial proposal. Like, why don't we put all of that towards the bond and then leverage impact fees? My question would be, have the impact fees we currently have been calculated, and what we project to come in, calculated into the rest of the capital improvement plan?
We did, initially, we did, but the history of the impact fees has been a little up and down, let's say that, because for a long period of time, they were about $27,000 on the school side, like, I'm talking for like a year and a half. And then all of a sudden, we started to get a lot more of them, so
Here's the development.
Right.
Right.
So when we started talking about the capital improvement plan, it was hard to say, okay, we're going to have this money available, because I don't have a good history of how the money has come in or why all of a sudden it's jumped so much. So we definitely could do that, but keep in mind, we have to research that as well, because the impact fees have to be directly related to the impact of development on the school. So you think expansion, you think growth, you think adding a classroom, you think increasing parking, you think things like that, right? It can't be used to replace lighting fixtures or something like that. So both of these kind of have competing yet similar guideposts that we have to go by.
I mean, Phil, some of it depends on, do you assume that Chinburg is going to keep coming down the hillside on Durrell, or are they good?
Well, no, I think my question was, and I think Jenny answered it, that we had not banked on those impact fees in the plan for funding the capital improvement plan. So that if we used impact fees to pay for the courtyard, it's not all of a sudden making the funding we had planned for the capital improvement plan all wonky-donkey. Like, so, if we're able to do that and pay down the bond, that feels like a viable, I think it seems viable to me, right? Even if it's only $23,000 difference, like you said, over time, $23,000 of principal on a 50-year bond or whatever, 45 years left or whatever, like that's something.
From 1947, or 2046. 1946, so 2046, I think.
2046 is the final payment.
Not quite 50 years, but long enough.
Long enough, yeah,
to
35,
be
whatever it is,
effective.
like.
Are we-
Significant effect.
Jana, on the impact fees, are we setting, we have our eyes on using any of this money for anything else right now?
We really haven't had a robust discussion with the board about them because, like I said, even 2 years ago, I think the balance was it went from 27,000 to 47,000. It really wasn't a whole lot. And I think that either a whole bunch of developments got completed at once or something's happened, but it's gone up dramatically. I do think that, it's a great time for Todd to talk with the recreation department and come up with kind of a plan there too, because expansion of community, facilities, athletic facilities, all of those things would fit under, kind of the impact thing area. And we may be able to partner with the town because they have some impact fees too, right? We might be able to come up with a really good solution or at least some ideas of how we might really capitalize on those together. So we have not earmarked them. They are not part of the capital plan, but I think it definitely gives you some options to discuss and things to investigate. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
If we can get confirmation that we could use them for the courtyard, I'd rather see the money come out of this than,
You'd rather
I don't
see,
think there's any,
yeah.
other than in my brain, I don't think there's any ambiguity that we can use them. Just,
Well, I think we can certainly get clarity to that for
Yep.
your next meeting, so we can have those questions, because it sounds like the desire would be to use the bond funds to pay down the bond.
Yeah.
And so let's.
yep,
for me.
we
Move
can
in
definitely
that
bring
direction.
that back and add that to the next agenda, and I will find out the nuances of what needs to happen for both models, so that however we decide to go, we'll know what we need to do and have all of those things.
power
But
of compound interest on our side.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one more thing I'd like to mention really quick. Net Zero has started work for the granite benches we're placing around the school.
Oh, yeah.
If you see outside, you'll see the holes dug in the caution tape. I just want to commend them on the hard work. What a great group of kids out there. Happy to do it. They came to work. Really impressive. They really are. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen, did you want to jump back to the insurance report?
So the next one on the agenda, I believe, is the DES remediation grant. I'm basically just asking the board to vote and to identify and authorize me to serve as the authoritative party authorized to sign the grant documents. So you can vote on that later. You have a document that basically tells what that is. And the reason, it's just because you approved the funding already, to accept the funding, but they want you to also approve an agent that's authorized to sign on behalf of the district. So that's that piece. And then the final item, I think it's the final one that I have on
Yes.
here. Okay. This is a little bit interesting, and it's kind of a semantic thing, but basically those of you who have been familiar with the ACA, all of you get a 1095 form from your employer that basically talks about your health coverage. It's a requirement under the ACA. There are certain ways that employers have to substantiate that we're providing affordable care. They're called safe harbors. One of them is pegged off the national poverty rate, and you can't be more than a certain percentage over that rate, or your coverage isn't affordable. There are other ways to qualify. You can do it based off of W-2 wages for different groups, but they become increasingly difficult because you have to look at the lowest paid person in each category, create a separate calculation, and make sure that that's done. And then each of those have different codes you have to put on. So it's a little bit complicated. It takes a bit of work. This year it came up because in the past, our orange plan that we offer to employees, which by the way is very poorly utilized. I think we may have some recommendations about that as part of the health benefits, but right now we currently don't have any employee outside of the paraprofessional group that take the orange plan. And the premiums on the orange plan have increased at a greater rate than the poverty level. So what happened this past year when we went to calculate it, and that's basically, we just have to offer it. No one has to take it, we have to offer it. But it was outside of the affordability calculation. So we had to find other ways to calculate and qualify, which we did. But what I'd like to propose, as I said, I do think that we may have some recommendations coming out of the Health Benefits Committee for kind of a longer-term solution. But I wanted the board to consider increasing the orange plan district contribution for everybody that's not collectively bargained. We can't do anything about those in a bargaining. From 85% employer contribution to 89% employer contribution. The financial impact based on our current enrollment in the orange plan would be 0, but we would present that to employees as an option. If we got somebody that did decide to switch over, it probably would result in a net savings to the district anyways, because they'd be coming from a more expensive plan to a less. But it's really just to comply with the ACA reporting requirements and make sure that we are offering what legal, is affordable coverage to our employees. So it's kind of a stopgap. Once we have the committee's recommendations, we may have some other things that we talk about with that high deductible plan. But that's my recommendation, and if you could vote it in as of, or consider it and vote as of July 1st of this year, this next year wouldn't be something that would be covered by our health benefits recommendations anyways. That would be for the subsequent year, but it would kind of allow us to comply. We know we would be able to offer affordable coverage, and it would minimize a lot of administrative headaches.
So basically, you increase the district contribution from 85 to 89 in the orange plan.
In the orange plan, yep. For everybody.
Nobody's using it.
And nobody's using it, yep. For everybody outside of the collective bargaining groups, they have different things in their groups. We can't do that without negotiating. But for everybody that's not in a collective bargaining agreement, we would increase the employer contribution from 85% to 89% for the 24-25 school year. Any questions on that? I know it's a little dry. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. All right. We are finally on discussion items. Has anyone received any correspondence? All right. Hearing none, we move on to budget process. I think Todd was our segue into.
Yeah, into the, just reflecting back on our Saturday morning retreat where we brainstormed and discussed various things. One of the topics we discussed was looking at a variety of issues regarding budget in our process over the course of the next couple of months, so we can kind of prepare ourselves for budget goal setting in July. One of the things that was expressed as a topic of interest in discussing was to take a look back at our recent election results, because I think there was a sense that, well, more than a sense, we know in this most recent election, the community supported our budget, but it was at one of the lowest rates of approval that we've seen in recent years. So what I did for you was kind of go back through the last 5 years of election results and kind of give you a sense of kind of where things fit historically. If you look at the top half of the chart that I gave you, you see the school district. The left-hand column, you see from 2020 to 2024 what the vote was on the operating budget article. And certainly Most recently in 2024, we got 57.5% yes, and that's what approved the vote. Two things jump out at me about that. Number one, it's the lowest approval rate we've gotten in the last 5 years, but it's also a very low number of participants in the vote. If you go back to previous years, you certainly in 2023, you see, and actually I want to acknowledge I made a math error in 2023. That actually I misread. It was 380 to 96, so it's actually 79.6% approval in 2023. So you can see it's more than 20% lower this year versus last year. Again, last year turnout was not great. You may recall in 2023 there was a snowstorm, and a lot of reasons why people might not have turned out, but regardless, there's a pretty substantial drop. Then you go back to 2022, and you see it was a higher turnout. 72.9% supported the overall operating budget. And you can see in the earlier years, 69 and 65%. One of the things that struck me as I was looking at this, we had talked about the concern, particularly we know we're going to have a teacher contract on the warrant opposite our budget. But one of the things that's very telling in looking at this, and it's also true in the town, when a contract is up, people show up in large numbers and vote yes, which is, clearly they support labor, they support our educators, but it's a dynamic to just kind of be thinking about, like, what does that mean if you have a teacher contract that's responsibly developed? What does that mean to who gets pulled out to vote? But you can see the bottom half of the town, the results are largely mirroring each other on the operating budget. I mean, it looks like pretty consistently the town supports the town operating budget by a couple of percentage points higher than the school district. But roughly it's the similar proportions. And you'll notice there are times when I included other big issues just as a way to give you an idea of what else was going on at the time. In the school district, you'll see in 2021, we created the School Improvement Bond Fund, and that brought people out, and they clearly supported it at a rate that was higher than the budget. Then 2022, that was the year that the retained fund balance article was created, so that people certainly supported that at a higher rate than they supported the budget. And this year, we had our CIP warrant article, and that actually got a higher percentage of support than the overall budget did. If you look down at the town, clearly the one thing that jumped out at me was the police contract in 2023 got very high support, and certainly there's a strong correlation between that and the result on the budget. And I also looked for issues that might have brought out a different demographic of people. So like in 2020, there was sports betting on the warrant. I mean, clearly, I think that required 60% to pass, didn't it?
No,
Yeah.
50. It passed.
Oh, it did, okay. But clearly it was controversial, and it brought out, that did bring out I guess you could say a slightly higher percentage of people. I know, Dan, you had asked the question about like the undervote count, and I looked it's all over the place. I couldn't determine a pattern. There's no question this year, in this year's vote, there was a higher number of undervotes. But every election, it appears that when people go to vote, they're just, some people are like, I don't care about the town budget, or I don't care about the bond articles, or I don't care about the moderator vote, but I came to vote for something else. It seems like that happens pretty consistently, and it's sort of all over the place. So I couldn't glean a pattern, but you're right. There was a higher number of I think 47 undervotes this year. So.
I might be wrong about sports betting. I was thinking about Keno. Keno's the one that passed. I don't know about sports betting. But I do think that, I look at the turnout, and I think it is interesting, the contract years, the approval rate, so that is really interesting to note. I hesitate to say this is a turnout problem, though, because I look at 2023 and 2021, and they both had lower turnouts than this year, and they both had 69% and 77%. So, we are still significantly 12 points lower than the lowest one that has had a lower end than this one. So, yeah, I just caution us to not look at the turnout as the problem, or as the core of the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think there's a piece of it you could say
Yeah.
is turnout. A piece of it you could say is that there wasn't anything else galvanizing on
Yep.
either the town or the school warrant this past year. I mean, nothing to really get
No big
excited
bonds, no
about.
big,
Yeah. So.
no contracts.
Yeah.
But they're both really close to 50%.
Yeah, I mean, you look at if there was anything that required 2/3%, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
Thanks for the analysis, though.
Yeah.
And if you want more years, I can dig further back if you want to know.
Start
I don't know
getting,
if
you
it's
start
very-
getting diminishing returns.
To try to compare anything today to pre-COVID reality feels a little like,
Well, 2020 would have been a pre-COVID reality because the election
would've
was
been
on
right
the eve.
before.
It was on the eve.
Oh,
So
yeah.
people showed up
yeah.
like it wasn't a pandemic.
Yeah, remember those days? I don't. All right. Run along, head into committee assignments. We do have one additional committee. We need a person for, that is the Teacher Growth and Evaluation Committee. It is a short-lived committee designed to help create a new evaluation tool for the teacher. Anyone have any interest in that?
What's the time commitment?
It's going to be fairly intensive for a period of months, kind of towards the beginning of next school year through however long it takes, so probably 3 months at the early part of the next school year. There'll probably be some organizational meetings this spring.
I do feel like I've gotten off a little easy this year, so I certainly can do that. Not that that's
It's interesting to me, and I wish I had more time, but I feel very committed to several committees here.
Yep.
Yeah, so just outside my area of expertise, really. Not much I can contribute there.
It's just one person.
Oh, I thought it was
I
two.
believe it's
thought it
two,
was
yeah.
two as
I
well,
believe it
but
is
it
two,
doesn't
yeah.
Yeah.
That here.
It's in, this is a contractual committee that's required when you change it, so it does require two, yes.
I'll put myself down. Anyone like to join me?
So it's starting in the spring, you said?
Yeah,
This-
I
well,
mean, the hope
it
is
is
in
spring,
May
right?
to have, kind of get an organizational effort going. I mean, there'll probably be some work potentially over the summer, and then probably 3 months of next school year, really doing a heavy lift of piecing it all together.
All right, well,
And that's during the end of the school day, I would assume, something around then?
Yeah, yep, at least to get started. I would not be surprised if, when they're doing some of the heavy lifting work, there might be like some release time for staff and spending a day here or there working on things. But that schedule has not been determined, and they would set that schedule based upon who's in the working group.
Certainly have, like, input from the other side about what I would
Sure.
want to be evaluated
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
The only tricky thing would be me getting my release time. But if there was an option for it to be, closer to a right after school type thing for the school day ones.
I would assume most of the meetings are going to be in like a 1 to 2 hour meeting blocks, and then there may be, like I say, longer release days for the heavy lift kind of work, but generally speaking, it would be 1 and 2 hour meetings.
Do you want to sign up for it, and then during the formation meetings, if we find out the schedule's not going to work for you, we can...
Yeah, sure.
and I could sub in, if she can't make it, I could go. Could we do that, or would that be all right?
Yep. All right, thank you. We'll head right into our school board goals. So we had a great retreat. We came up with some ideas towards goals. I know it is 6:30, but if we could discuss maybe heading in the direction of finalizing some goals, that would be good. I guess for the record, items that we discussed were thinking about multi-year goals, what kind of communication strategy, we could have what it would be, social media be included or not. Student achievement certainly was a large item of concern and we wanted to focus on. Enrollment, strategies to increase enrollment. We talked about Todd maybe reaching out to some neighboring communities that may be looking for new high schools to send students to. Talked about the budget and maybe coming up with some building blocks at each meeting to discuss the budget process and help us create a more data-driven budget decision in July. First building block we had tonight. We talked about community involvement to support the school district. How do we present the budget to the voters? How do we develop deeper understanding related to why there's less voter turnout in recent elections, or perhaps why people vote no? We considered inviting elementary students to present at the school board meetings. Lonnie pointed out the fact that the elementary school parents don't necessarily feel as directly connected to the school board. It may be a problem at both schools, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know, especially the high school it feels.
Based on the turnout, but that was really good to hear, to learn, so that was interesting. And then we talked about visibility and fostering a dialogue to engage the community.
If we want to frame this, like the SMART framework that we were looking at, probably the ones that are most conducive to actually creating something measurable and that we can deliver on would be, student achievement. I mean, concretely, what do we want to do to push that? My thoughts, given the scope of what our role actually is in all of this, that, we don't run the school, we don't teach, obviously, well, other than Lonnie. None of us teach here, is really more about focus and attention and, measurement, unless somebody has other ideas of things we could do to help.
I think keeping things in the focus too, right?
Yeah. So it doesn't seem too hard to come up with something that's actually measurable and that realistic that we can deliver on this year, in terms of, I think, just how often do we want to go over whatever, the measures that are available, whether they're standardized tests or other measures that we have access to, and what specifically do we want to do with the information when it comes to us, other than just staring at it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really an ongoing goal, right? Like you measured, you said we go over them how many times a year? Twice?
Yeah, at
3
least
times?
twice.
Yeah. So now what do we do with that? That's what we have to determine, really.
Yeah.
And
I do think part of it is the public dialogue around what our standards are and talking about that. And I could see, a goal bringing staff in to talk about classroom level assessment tools that they're using and work that they're doing at the classroom level to better understand how our teachers define rigor and things like that. So there's lots of topics you could certainly address in public that might kickstart some of the effort around it.
And I think having a hard metric of a goal of pass rate, proficiency rates or whatever we want to set the goal on, either increase proficiency rates or proficiency rate target or that we are just getting reports on and then understanding we're not going to get into how that happens. We get into the resourcing of how that happens, but we could hear from teachers and administration.
Yeah, I think having teachers come in to discuss it does two things, right? It shows that it's something that's not just the administration at the school pushing and can be forgotten about because we all care about it, but it also gives focus and sense of appreciation to the teachers who come in and maybe.
I think it also gives focus to superintendent schools,
Sure.
to the building
Oh, of course,
leadership
yeah, of course,
schools.
it's gonna
There's,
trickle down,
I think it
but
gives
yeah.
focus to how people spend their time.
Yeah.
I'd really like to hear from teachers who are experiencing real measurable success. What do you attribute it to? What do you get up in the morning thinking about that gets you in the right place to deliver on those things?
Or who aren't? What do they think they would be lacking?
probably, my personal bias would be to take the more positive approach, but I'm not, I can be convinced.
What humiliation.
I wasn't thinking that
No, I know,
regard, but
yeah,
he does
ribbing
bring up a
you.
good point.
I do think there's an opportunity in some of these goals to connect them. So like,
Yeah.
it's a topic that you can have community engagement on. Like, what are the standards and expectations that we have as a
Multi-year.
community that we aspire to? Because I think one of the things that we haven't done enough of with our discussions of vision of a graduate is, let's start talking aspirationally. What do we want? What do we want kids to achieve? And I think we can ask the educators that question, but it's also important to ask parents that question. It's also important to ask the board that question, so that eventually you arrive at a place of like, what does a rigorous Newmarket education look like? And I think that certainly could be part of your goal, is to try to flesh that out.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly think we need a student achievement goal. Like, one that we can set some ambitious but ultimately achievable target that's measurable, and then we understand the work that's happening underneath it, right? That the administration and the teachers are doing. Some of these I also think are like somewhat interrelated. Like when I see communication strategy and I see community involvement, and then visibility and dialogue with the community, those all to me sound like communication. Right? Like, I think that oftentimes we see communication strategy, and what that's code for is monologue, not dialogue, like one-way communication channels. But it's, I think, how do we foster that two-way communication? And those all seem to be swirling somewhere around that. Similarly, I see the enrollment conversation and the budget one as very, right? Like, there's two sides to a budget, there's expenditures and revenues. That enrollment conversation is all about revenue. And it feels like there might be some way, like, not to make it's so packing too much into a goal that it's like everything, but that those two are like interrelated into a single goal.
Also, we had a communication-related goal last year. It, my opinion, probably wasn't specific enough in terms of what we meant to do, so we sort of stared at it every other week and
Admired it.
yes.
Poked it, said, do a communication.
Yes. So whatever we are thinking to do, we need to, actually have a plan that goes along
Yeah,
with
like
it.
build a, like, hey, we're going to this many community set, like dialogue sessions, like
Yes.
where this many people show up. But like that, like, like actually getting out, like places we're going to get into the community. I totally agree. Something that's measurable, that we can hold ourselves accountable to.
Yes.
I do think enrollment, like when thinking about where you can send your children, is connected to achievement. And not only that, but if we have a target and it's a multi-year goal, people are looking also at growth from here to here, rather than like, okay, so this many kids like tested really well that year on these measures, but maybe it was just a really smart class, or maybe it was, a really easy test. But if you're able to look and see that children are growing each year towards that target, or even meeting that target, I think that's more of a selling point for parents to say, okay, this means that they're obviously successfully learning
Right.
what it is that,
Yeah, it's a big one.
combined with the rigor, so it's not, because it's too easy, we see this growth towards the target while the rigorous instruction or learning is happening. So obviously, like, I want my kids to, experience that versus something that's,
Sell me a Newmarket school district.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're not bear oil salespeople.
Well, I do think, one of the conversations you and I had on Monday, talking about like reporting and like what's the information parents want to know about how their child is doing in school that is going to aid them in better understanding the experience. Because we talk about engagement, that's a topic that's very engaging because everybody has an opinion on it. And I think those are things that when you start talking about achievement only in terms of standardized data points, you lose people.
Yeah.
But the more you can actually, like, what are other things you want to hear about and see, and you want to know that's happening for your child in school, and how can we provide you that feedback so you can know it? I think that's a valuable thing.
Piggybacking on that, something that occurs to me a lot is it would be great if we could find a way to improve the signal to noise ratio going out to the community, and particularly where student achievement is concerned. You and I have talked a bit about how do we improve the way that we're using Infinite Campus and Google Classroom to just improve the signal to noise ratio there. That, I mean, some of it is training, some of it is maybe tweaking the way the system functions a bit, but to make the communications going out more meaningful and fewer things that are essentially false alarms. That same principle probably extends to other things that the district is communicating out. How do we really focus and make the communications going out something that people are going to want to pay attention to?
Not even misunderstood communications, but not, I don't think a lot of community members or families understand the information they're being, they're not thinking it's necessarily negative, but they're looking at it and saying, I don't know what this means, so it's clearly not that important.
That really
I'll ask
came
the
through
teacher.
on election day, the number of folks who just stopped by the table again when I was sitting up there and were borderline begging for some sort of clarity because they didn't understand a significant chunk of what they were, and that's not different necessarily from any past year. It's not that the trend is getting worse, but it's not really getting better either.
So where are we?
I'm wondering if maybe two people want to take a stab at creating some consolidated goals.
Could I ask one friendly amendment to that? I think the student achievement one, I think if the superintendent could help author what that goal would look like.
Sure.
Like with his team, I just think that like there's such specificity, like what metrics could we actually like move the dial on within a year? What like that, we want to make sure that it's not.
I guess I was thinking we could get to like, not defining the KRs, the metrics we're going to measure it by, but maybe creating goals and then build on to those to start defining the metrics out of.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
if
happy
you're that ambitious to
I'm
do
happy
it,
to
we
be
can
part of
do it.
whatever group is taking a swing at what they look like and leave just like X's for the, like whatever numbers, numerical.
And certainly if there's ideas, I would.
Yeah, I mean, I want I really feel like I want the numeric part of it in there, and Gary's right, we're probably not educated enough as the five of us to actually put numbers on that. We need.
I think it was.
Okay.
He just refuses to say it, right? That's fine, I get it.
We need Todd and his team's support to come up with what is a realistic and attainable goal, but I feel bad if we didn't actually have something that we could hold up at the end of the year and say we got there or we didn't.
Oh, I completely agree.
I know, but we are doing this in a way already, like we're supporting new curriculum, right? That's part of this goal, right?
Well, and I think it's fair to say at the end of the year,
And
next
then,
year, we want a new curriculum chosen and implemented.
right,
And
but I
start
mean,
reporting on the results of it, yeah.
right,
absolutely.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
just, but if we're not actually looking at the number, looking at proficiency.
Oh, yeah.
And like, and being like, we met our target or we didn't, then what are we doing?
Yeah,
I completely agree with you. I guess the first pass at it, I wasn't thinking that we could get that far, but if we can, that's fantastic.
I mean, it's, what is the and so? We're supporting a new curriculum and a new program for this. And so we expect to see, this metric improve by this amount.
Would you and Phil, whoever you are, Dan, Phil, and Todd, be willing to kind of maybe do some email back and forth and
Yeah, sure.
name tag on this?
I was going to say, I'll get money on that.
Yeah, I know you can.
There we go.
Thanks. Oh, yeah,
Worst
you're right
picture
there.
ever taken.
Yeah.
Tell you what, I'll put out an email to the two of you
Okay.
with some thoughts tomorrow. I'll get
Okay.
Patty involved and then we
yeah, I
can
was going to say,
take it
get
from there.
Patty,
Yep.
that's her wheelhouse.
Good idea. Awesome, thank you. Summer meeting schedule, location, and conflicts.
And could I just, I think Patty gave you a quick,
Yeah,
On
she
page
did.
27, right?
yep, page 20.
Two numbers.
Long packet. Basically, last year, we had one meeting in July, and I think we did it pretty late in July, and thank you, because it was to accommodate my vacation, and I appreciate that. However, it was a long gap between the June meeting and July meeting, so it's better to have a meeting in early July for wrapping up financial stuff. Am I right about that, Jim? Yeah. Okay. So we are proposing, the normal night that we would have the meeting would be July 4th, and I presume people are not excited about having a board meeting on the 4th, so proposing having a meeting on July 11th as the July meeting, and then in August resuming the twice a month, first and third Thursdays, with the fact that over the course of next year, there are idiosyncrasies that show up, either a school vacation week or whatever, that throws off that sequence. So some recommended changes to that pattern in January, just because it's right around the winter break. And then the first meeting in May would be during spring break, and then potentially Juneteenth, which is a holiday, would fall into that pattern, and we'd probably want to adjust for that. But other than that,
And we could certainly move these later if we find the first doesn't work or whatever. We're not set in stone for any of these.
The only one I'd like to try to set in stone now is if we can agree on July 11th.
Can we accommodate my vacation stuff?
does
I can
it-
actually attend virtually. I won't be on vacation, I'll just be in a different state.
on July 11th?
Yeah,
Okay.
that week.
Yeah, you can definitely virtual if you
virtual,
want to.
okay.
Yep, we can do that.
So July 11th, August 1st, August 15th. August 15th I would not be able to do, but the other two I would.
By having a meeting on the 1st of August and the 15th of August, that's pretty early in the month. It certainly wouldn't be out of the reason if you wanted to have a meeting in later August, maybe moving instead of having the 15th, maybe doing it on the 22nd, just because that's about the time teachers are coming back. That might be a better timing from that perspective.
I don't know of any conflicts at this point, so.
So moving the August 15th to August 22nd, is that what
Yeah,
I'm hearing?
That
That
sounds
sounds
good.
reasonable? Okay, yep, okay.
Now, what's the January 2nd one?
It's just the first day back from the holiday break.
Yeah.
And then just thinking that might be,
So you don't want to have it that
yeah,
day?
preferably not that day.
So it would be, what, the 9th? Or-
Yeah, so that, so yeah, to have it on the, hold on a second. What is the day of the week? The second is a Thursday, so
Yeah. So the 9th, 16th, 23rd.
Right. Although, you
5
know,
Thursdays in that month, so.
yep.
No choice.
And the, just because I have it on my brain, because the Budget Committee has already started working, the budget hearing is tentatively scheduled for Monday, the 6th of January.
I know, I don't even want to think about that.
Already scheduled. So does the January 9th work for people?
With this much notice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There's literally nothing else in my life. I'm planning out to this distance.
And then, okay, so we good with those recommended adjustments then? Okay.
Yes. Great. All right, having to acknowledge some very generous donations. We have a $750 donation for mental toughness and mindset mastery presentation and workshop, which Blake Neary was petitioned for, or
That's
applied
actually,
for, I guess.
that's actually for the athletic department. All the athletes are going to get this.
Oh, excellent. $750 for brains bins for second grade. Not entirely sure what that's for.
Do we want to know?
No,
Yeah,
probably not. $750 for drama club field trip to Boston. See the play Hadestown.
Yep.
We had talked about the $350 Food for reinforcement of positive behaviors. Is that right? Food?
No, it's fund for reinforcement of positive
Okay.
behaviors.
It does say E, just so.
It's the food. Yeah, you're right.
Let's
make sure I'll mention that to Patty Van.
Schoolers.
The fund.
And $712.87 for flexible seating for the kindergarten. Thank you, NECP, for, I think, almost all those, right?
Looks that way, yeah.
Yep, all of them.
At 6:45, open floor public comment.
Not really public, but I just wanted to ask the board if you would consider adding an item 8 to your action items to take a vote on the health insurance proposal that was left
That would be
out.
item 9, because
Oh,
item
9.
8 I put down as retirement
Oh,
incentives.
sorry, okay, 9.
Because I was hoping to get that settled too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no public comment, we'll close the floor at 6:46. We'll head into action items. Seek a motion to approve the April 11th, 2024 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Those are, any discussion? All those in favor?
I'm sorry, hold on, I did have,
Oh, sorry.
one thing, when we were discussing the memorandum of understanding on the Newmarket Epping football team, so that, it's like 3 sentences down into that. In addition, Epping has redacted one point in the contract. I think they deleted it. Redacted would imply that they were
Yeah,
hiding.
yeah,
covered it.
Yeah, deleted,
That's
you're
true,
right.
right.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Zero. I don't know as we approved sealed minutes, did we? Phil, do you recall if we approved sealed minutes?
We sealed the minutes last
We
time.
did, so I don't recall whether we actually have to approve them.
I mean, we have to approve the
They're
minutes.
sealed,
They're sealed, we just have to approve them.
which no one saw because I sealed them. Okay, seek a motion to approve the sealed minutes from non-public on April 11th.
So moved.
Second.
Bill, Dan, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Did the manifest stick around somewhere?
We met last week.
Good meeting every single week. We don't have one. Excellent. Seek a motion to approve the fiscal year 25 through 27 on-call electrical services recommendation by Dave Riley.
So moved.
Motion by Amy Tilton, is there a second? I'll
Second.
Oh, Dan got me. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Seek a motion to approve Janet Mellon, to authorize Janet Mellon to sign the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services lead remediation grant on behalf of the Newmarket School District.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion by Phil, second by Lonnie. All right, any discussion? Janet, thank you for taking on that monumentous task. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We've proposal from Todd to make the last day of school the 13th of June and the last day for staff the 14th. Want to finalize that? Seek a motion? to
So
approve
moved.
those?
Enthusiastically second.
Motion, or you want to vote? All right. Motion by, seconded by Dan, excuse me. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right. We have a fiscal year 25 general assurances, 17-page document here. It's in our materials as well. Does anyone have any questions on these? Basically, it's Janet, do you want to explain what this is?
I mean, basically, we have to do it every year to receive grant funding. It basically is us giving assurances that we're going to follow all the laws and the rules and everything. And so the board simply says they agree, and then they authorize Gary and I to sign on the district's behalf.
What Todd said. Seek a motion to approve and authorize Todd and I to sign the 2025 general assurances document.
So moved.
Second.
By Dan, second by Amy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Let me see. Does everyone feel comfortable about, comfortable making a decision on the retirement incentives? That was the decision of whether or not to pay the retirement incentives this year or next year. I'd be inclined to pay it out of this year's fund
Yeah, I
balance.
would too.
'Cause we know what we have. Or I think we know what we have,
Yeah, I agree.
as opposed to next year.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm fine with
All right, seek a motion to approve paying the retirement incentives out of the 2023-24 budget?
FY '24.
FY '24, thank you, budget.
So moved.
It gets worse, Lonnie, but later it gets. So motion by Amy,
Second.
second by Lonnie. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. And last up, we have health insurance to change the fund, orange fund, to something.
Contribution rate up
To
to
89%.
85%.
Thank you.
And as of right now,
89%.
No, as of now, nobody's in it, so there's no cost. It's just making that adjustment.
that. So,
Thank you, Phil.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Amy. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, I think that is it for action items. Seek a motion to move into non-public session. Pursuant to RSA 91A3 to Roman 2C.
so
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Amy. Roll call vote. Amy Tilton.
Aye.
Gary Swanson, aye. Dan Smith.
Aye.
Lonnie Stebbins.
Aye.
And Ken Lazar.
aye.
With that, we are in non-public session at 6:51 PM.
And we won't be coming back
And
to
we will
public
not be coming back on air.
on air. Thank you.
We will be coming back to
Yeah, we'll-
public session.
we'll go
If anyone
across the
wants to
hall.
come in, join us.
Make sure I take this out.
Yeah, you get in big trouble.
Did Andy have a civics class assignment tonight?
Have a what?
Andy sat through the whole meeting. I'm like, this meeting civics class?
I know. No, I think he's,
Okay.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for chasing us down and not letting us walk out with microphones.
I was more afraid it was going to get heard for non-public, so.